Hello there. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. Um, so today I want to uh, talk about a topic that I wasn't intending to discuss today, but a topic nonetheless that feels really important if I'm going to be going forward um, with this series of impromptu lectures that I'm doing online. Um, the other day, I presented a series of concepts having to do with the three centers. And today, I was intending on uh, putting forth a series of thoughts about the four directions. And I was pretty sure that I had a good series of thoughts to lay out for everybody. And then I was having a discussion earlier this morning and came to my attention that I am laying out a lot of information which synthesizes a number of systems which have their own points of view, perspectives, teachers, etc., that are all really worthy and really important to consider. And also, I don't really engage with them in a way which might be considered traditionally or formally consistent with maybe some ways that people had already heard some of these things mentioned. So this got us talking about the way that we tend to engage with information and the way that we, as learners in 2020, have been trained to learn and trained to think. And this is a complex series of thoughts to lay out. So I'm going to do my best to try to keep it concise, but to talk about how to engage with this material, how to engage with any material from my point of view, and maybe ideally clarify my own intentions around sharing some of these thoughts and ideas with the internets. So when considering learning of any kind, it's important to understand that we are hoping to, from my standpoint, gain access to knowledge so that we can apply it, not so that we can prove to somebody we know it. And this has been brought to my attention a number of times that more often than not, we are given information so that we can prove to somebody via their own metric that we understand the material, rather than we are given some material, we are then allowed the freedom to play with it, to explore it, to break it down, to question it, interrogate it, and make it our own so we can find application for it. So I'm going to present the way that I believe we should all be engaging with material, not from the standpoint of if you want to learn this faster or better or take a test better, but for me, the way I engage with material and hope that I'm able to then make something functional. If somebody gives me a new concept, a new idea, a new thought that I like, I then am going to attempt, first and foremost, just to listen, just to take in exactly what they're saying, understand it as fully as I can. And then I'm going to begin to say, does this sound like anything I already know? Does this feel like something intuitively that I can link to another bit of information that I already have from this field of knowledge or that field of knowledge, et cetera, et cetera? Where does this fall? Can it link on to something else? And can I use it to help understand or to expand that field of knowledge by taking this piece of information in? If there's nothing in my brain that I can link it to immediately, then I just let it be on its own. I just let it be a standalone piece of information that I can allow my heart, my mind, and my body to kind of dream into, to just let myself fully be washed over by the material, fully allow myself to be immersed in. And then I'm going to start to pick it apart and find the pillars that it builds itself upon. Are there some underlying assumptions that I do or don't understand that I need to get a better sense of? How can I look to those things to either fill in knowledge I don't have, gaps in my own understanding about the idea, or can I ask a series of questions about the underlying assumption that will help me to either say, I find this to be extremely useful, I find this to be somewhat useful, or I find this to be wanting? Is there a kernel, even if I find it wanting, that is a nice, useful little bit that I can say, ooh, I like that though. That sent me down an interesting rabbit hole. And even if I can just, from the ashes of this interrogation, take this little pearl and then send myself down a rabbit hole of research, all the better, right? It doesn't need to be fully valid in order for me to find something valid within it. This is an essential truth for me to engaging with any piece of information. Nothing that we learn is gonna or should be taken completely at face value. Everything that I'm learning, I'm trying to find a place that it can click in and link with my other knowledge, or something that it can do for me that is going to send me off on another series of explorations. This for me is essential to engaging with playful learning which is not necessarily interested in an outcome, but is interested in perhaps the enrichment of the learner. That by, in its truest sense, the liberal arts methodology for learning says learn broadly so that you can understand many things from many angles. The Japanese, in their traditional folklore, have this idea of the three treasures, right? The sword, the mirror, and the jewel. And the jewel is meant to show the many faceted nature of truth, that I can look at truth from many points of view. And sometimes what I'm learning might not even have a direct usefulness, but it might give me another perspective, another angle from which to look at an idea or myself or something else, to better understand the truth. This is, for some, I think, a somewhat frustrating way of engaging with information, because it ultimately has no direct, why am I doing this, right? There is no test to study for at the end of it. There is no degree to have earned at the end of it. There's just you engaging with this information from the sense of self-exploration and play. We are so often incentivized in our current time and place to embrace a method of learning which says, I have to become an expert at this. I have to become an expert in a particular topic or field so that I can monetize my communication of that topic or field. There are a lot of reasons for this. There are a lot of points of view for this. But ultimately, I do find for myself, I cannot put a value judgment on it for others about how you should engage or shouldn't engage with anything. But I do find it as a learning methodology, as a framework for engaging in learning, to be somewhat limiting because it is going to always have us tend toward kind of a normalcy bias. It's going to have us tend toward thinking which is coherent within a field itself, while not necessarily taking into account a a multilateral uh, sort of point of view on any bit of material. And so for me, this is why I think I wanted to really specifically speak to this specific topic before I start laying out any other additional theoretical frameworks going forward for our spiritual doctrine, the way we engage with spiritual doctrine. Because we are non-denominational and because we are, kind of interfaith in our framework, I tend to prefer a doctrine of my own personal practice, which is inclusive of maybe not all other doctrines, but many other doctrines that tends to want to pull from doctrines of many faiths, so that the way I engage with my spirituality is something that is always going to be coming from the framework of, again, that many faceted jewel of truth, right? Today, I might be needing to look at it this way. Tomorrow, I might need to be looking at it that way. And so it's a really important functional aspect of why my doctrine is the way it is. We were talking a little bit about skill acquisition and why skill acquisition or is more effective when we consider positive affirmational thinking versus kind of negative feedback loop sort of thinking. And it felt resonant in terms of why I was making that statement, just like why I'm making this statement. I'm not making it for any one particular reason. I'm making it because I believe that there are multiple reasons that overlap, none of which are more important than the others. But when you take all of the reasons in their totality together, then you say, oh, okay, so this actually makes a lot of sense for why we would want to engage with information in this way. Ultimately, what I'm attempting for us to try to do in the way that we're going to present information on this channel, but also through our larger work, is by providing these kind of very wide open sort of doctrinal frameworks for people to engage with their own exploration of the material. For instance, my 3 centers doctrine was simultaneously 3 or 4 different systems all kind of slammed together, finding the overlaps. I'm going to do the same thing when I talk about the 4 directions. And it's going to continue to get more and more convoluted as we go from there. As I present information in this format here, this longer form, 30-minute is my kind of framework for these long form lecture talks. I am hoping that each individual piece can kind of be pulled out and used for the listener's thought process to kind of mull over a bunch of times, essentially forgetting about all the other pieces that I've mentioned, with the understanding that eventually we come back and we say, okay, I've really turned this over. I feel pretty good about the mind, body, and heart piece. Now I'm gonna think about the three worlds: this underworld, overworld, middle world concept. I'm gonna mull that over. I'm gonna play with that. And over the course of a couple of years, that's kind of daunting, right? Over the course of a couple of years, these will start to overlap and intertwine and interplay and interrelate with our experiences, with our own personal growth work, with our own personal challenges and opportunities that come and face us. At the end of that, you now have a relationship that is different from my relationship with the material, but the material is quote unquote the same. But I now might benefit deeply from listening to you share about that material. I might now deeply be able to say, thank you so much for sharing with me your experience. And because we're both looking at the same jewel from this opposite sides, we can meet in the middle as we share our own experience of the thing itself. Because my words are not the thing itself, right? I'm not here to get you to believe me. I'm not here to be right, because as all of my, really good teachers have said, none of us own any of this. None of us own any of this. If I'm saying something, I can guarantee that someone has said it before me. I can guarantee that someone has thought it before me. I'm reasonably intelligent, and I can guarantee you I've never had a truly original thought. Maybe I've said something in a somewhat original way. Maybe I even can think about the way I came to my own thought process and say, well, that was all from me. I wasn't referencing anybody, right? All of these talks are just me speaking. But I can guarantee you that somebody else has had these thoughts. And so this helps because it, I believe, kind of sets us all free to just engage and have a genuine dialogue about what's going on. And because my goal is to help us get away from the short form frameworks, these kind of snippet, soundbite frameworks for understanding information, it's really my intention, my goal for all of us to just take things into ourselves and to meditate on them more deeply, to meditate on them more deeply. And this requires us all to let go of being the expert. This requires us all to let go of being right. I have this kind of long running series of conversations with certain friends of mine. And I find that the conversations that go the best is when neither person is trying to express or hold dominance. When both participants are just there to share and hear and be interested. I find that that really goes wrong when someone is saying, look at what I did, look at this thing that I came up with, look at this thing that I own, look at this thing that came from me, right? Rather than, I was meditating on this thing. It really kind of made me go down this rabbit hole, and I was, I was thinking about this. That's interesting. That's interesting. And then we play with it, right? And we play back and forth, like playing a game of catch. And this way, again, forces us to get out of how we can monetize something. This way of playing with information forces us to leave behind the grading mentality. Did I get an A? Did I get a B? Did I get a C? Who gives a shit? Did you have a good conversation? And that for me is ultimately the truth, right? Because we're all just having a conversation with the universe. We're all just having a big, long, never ending conversation with the universe, right? There's only one relationship, me and the universe. Everyone in it is a manifestation of the universe. And we tend to want to relate to each other and know where we fall, right? Where we stand. Am I above or am I below? Um, Whereas the truth is, we're all swimming in the same water. That wouldn't change whether you were up, 1,000 feet higher and I was 1,000 feet lower. It wouldn't change ultimately. Um, and so as we're embracing our own learning journeys through this material, as I am presenting concepts, um, I'm going to present things that are from my own distillation of many different systems over the course of my life. I'm going to speak in a very matter of fact manner, and I am going to present material in a way that will likely make me come off as smart. I don't care about that. And I don't really want you to care about it either. I will be perfectly honest when I say that my goal is mostly to get people to engage with the material, and that is why I'm presenting it. I don't want to be perceived as the expert. I want to be perceived as someone who's doing some genuinely good work in the world. And I perceive communication, right, and effective communication to be a work unto itself, right? I do these talks with the understanding that no one's going to watch them until maybe later. Maybe no one's going to watch them at all. I'm largely doing them for me. I'm largely doing them so that I can learn how to more effectively communicate my relationship to the material itself. I have my relationship now that I have. I will have a different relationship in the future. That relationship now is based on my experience that I've had till to date. And my relationship in the future will be based on the way that I engage with the material going forward. And that's okay. This sense of play, this sense of personal mastery, this sense of personal relationship to the material is what I hope to foster. I hope to be passionate about the ideas so that others feel like these ideas are worth being passionate about on some level, right? I am interested in us, ideally, one day, yes, we will use these talks to you know, come back, break these things down into, 5 or 10 minute videos, chop them all up, present them in a way that it's easier for everybody to digest and to engage with over a long period of time. Sure. But I want people to begin to embrace their own relationship with the material. I want people to begin to find within themselves the pieces that resonate and allow it to lead them down a rabbit hole, allow it to lead them down a pathway of personal exploration, personal inspiration, and personal development. And so, all of that, said, we, I think, very naturally come to, kind of the conclusion point of all of this, which is just there's going to be a lot I'm going to present. The goal is not to track everything I've said, agree with everything I've said, or think I'm smart for saying it. Ideally, we will find a concept or two, a kernel or two as I listen, welcome it into ourselves, welcome the dialogue into ourselves, the exploration into ourselves, and be changed by it. And as we are changed by the dialogue with ourselves, our relationship changes to the world around us, to ourselves, to the material itself. And ideally, we enjoyed that. Ideally, somewhere along the line, we found some enjoyment, right? Ideally, along the way, we found some part of ourselves that was lit up, right? And that's where the play piece comes in so strongly. Ideally, we're letting ourselves play. When we're kids, we maybe play with blocks. When we're adults, maybe we still play with blocks, but maybe we also let ourselves play with ideas and concepts, musings, and whatnot, just like we would play with new body postures and new, movement patterns and all of that sort of stuff. We're really just trying to expand what's possible in our thinking. We're trying to expand not just what's possible in our thinking, but we're also trying to deepen the way that we can integrate it into our being over time, right? So a lot of the material I'm going to try to present, a lot of the material I have tried to present to date is actually all about stuff that I hope we move beyond a surface understanding of and go into a deepening understanding of, right? That we're looking to bring it in and deepen the relationship with it rather than just saying, yeah, I get it, I get it, I get it. Because my learning process was spent, sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of listening to my teachers say the same things over and over and over again. And it's this programming, right? It's this brainwashing, indoctrination, right? That we're all kind of embracing when we want to get good at something. We really take on board the thinking. We take on board the assumptions, the little pillars that all the other thinking is built on. And we have to be able to say, like, okay, I'm just going to take this one pillar. I'm going to separate it out from everything else. I'm going to really understand it. And we have to have the patience with ourselves, the patience with the material, the patience with the process, with the time it takes to break it down and to work through it, and to come to grips. What do I understand? What don't I understand? What do I think is just absolute nonsense? What do I think is just like, ooh, God, I love that part right there. I love that. That's great. And how do we go deeper? How do we bring it more into us and on board? So, that's essentially what I have for us today about this concept of kind of learning, play, and expertise versus self mastery and relationship with the material. This concept of freedom, perhaps, is the thing I want to leave us on the most, right? I hope that as we engage with this newer, maybe different way than some of us are used to engaging with material, that we embrace the freedom that it offers us, that we embrace that this is actually a totally free way of engaging with the information, right? It requires that I don't own it and that you don't own it. So it's free in that way. It requires that you are not constrained in your thinking, right? And so there's total freedom for where you can take it. And where you take it's going to be different from where I take it because you've had a different buildup. But that in that freedom, we find individual expression. And in individual expression, we find individual relationship. And in individual relationship, we deepen our relationship with the universe and everything else around us. And so, like and subscribe. Check out our Facebook our Instagram and our website if you're interested in kind of hearing more of our kooky musings. And if you've made it this far, as always, a deep gratitude to you for listening. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day.